And later we started to have a canopy, and then we could introduce the secondary species, which are only the indigenous species. And so we reintroduced all these mainly evergreen species that are shade species. We reintroduced them in the shade of these pioneers that we put 5 years before. You cannot reforest completely the whole planet, so you have to create sanctuaries, green reserve, and then it's the birds between these sanctuaries that will carry the seeds in between the sanctuaries.
The main aim of the planting of this type of forest in Auroville is basically to have one secure place where we have this forest growing. It's like a future gene pool. If anybody ever in the future wants to use these trees again, plant them, then in Auroville we have at least one place that is secure where plant material can be taken for future work and future projects.
The forest has an impact on the percolation of water. It is basically the forest who is the key of the hydrological cycle on the planet and the key to our reserve of water and the key to the climate. So today we are in a global climate change, and it is basically the forest who is going really to restore, who is going to help us to restore a proper balance, ecological balance on the planet, a proper climatic balance.
Of course, man's awkwardnesses still make me sigh at times. I have my trees' vision of things, and they have their way of seeing things. But at least the earth had begun to live again. Let's just say that I was not displeased to see them, in their ways, take root upon this earth.
In order to take shelter from the sun and the monsoons, we first created communities. That is a collection of simple dwellings, straw-roofed huts, erected around a water source and a common kitchen. With time, some began to build individual houses. Others, more adventurous, remained resolutely wedded to experimentation. The first collective buildings, schools, theatres, restaurants, set the frame for the nascent city. At this time, we had little or no electricity at all, and we therefore had to find alternative solutions for our energy needs. We tried to tackle the problem in a number of ways. First, by building windmills to pump well water and to supply electricity. For this, we were inspired by the ancient Cretan windmill. Of course, it was somewhat rudimentary and difficult to get going and erect. But if there was wind, it worked. Then our windmill technology became more refined, and today our Windmill Research Centre is the only one existing in India. We have installed over 30 windmills in Auroville, as well as in Karnataka, Coimbatore and South Arcot. The government of Tamil Nadu encourages the building of windmills with funding grants. At the same time, we have developed biogas as an energy source for cooking and lighting. It is simple, economical, and we produce the ferrocement domes ourselves. One of the advantages of biogas is the possibility to stock this form of energy.
So this is the gas holder where the gas is stored. This is the inlet, so the dung from the bullock and the kitchen waste gets mixed here with water and goes through the pipe into the container which is set in the ground. The spent slurry comes out on the other side, and that we use to make our own compost. And the gas is piped underground to the kitchen, where we have a special biogas stove on which we do all our cooking.
The rain, earth, wind, and sun nourished me. In return, I contributed to the natural balance and equilibrium. But what of men?
From the beginning of our adventure, we set ourselves the goal of being self-sufficient in food needs. Of course, there was no question of our using pesticides or any type of chemical fertilizers. Our researches are consciously oriented towards organic agriculture.
Annapurna is 135 acres, which we basically grow dryland crops and some wetland crops in the monsoon. The idea is to grow as much as possible food for Auroville. We work with traditional varieties, traditional grains, pulses, oil seeds. We keep our own seeds. We do sometimes some selection. We have a small seed bank in the paddy, in the rice. So from there we just select and we try to see that we improve over time. The idea is to have, let's say, very healthy soil. Healthy soil here in the tropics, I think, is basically no chemicals and lots of organic matter. With that organic matter you create soil life, and soil life somehow does it itself. We try to use as much as possible rainwater. We have 3 water catchment ponds here, which have some capacity about 25,000 cubic meters we can store. So we catch rain and we pump it back into the field. We think the water from the ponds, which is pure rainwater, is much better for the plants. We can also see the results.
So welcome to the Auroville Botanical Garden. Here it's a vegetable seed bank project where we try to conserve, multiply and disseminate ancient variety of vegetables which are reproducible by the farmers. We are obviously completely organic, using organic technique of cultivation. Actually we are pretty much close to demonstrate that within an organic system we can produce as much as chemical system and the conventional system. It's a bit the aim of that research center here, is to demonstrate that organic is viable and productive.
In temperate climates, we have trees that reach a height of 40 meters, and if you analyze the soil, it is quite rich. 50% of the nutrients are found in the plants and 50% in the soil. In tropical climates, you have trees that reach a height of 80 meters, and if one analyzes the soil, it is extremely poor. How is it that the poorest soils of the planet sustain the highest vegetation? There is a paradox here. Because temperatures in tropical climates are so high and the rains torrential, all the nutrients are mineralized, swept away, burnt, because the metabolisms are both significant and very rapid. Nature has found an answer to this tropical phenomenon by pushing upwards all the nutrients into biomass. That is, all the nutrients are constantly transforming biomass, because if one leaves them in the soil, they do not remain, they disappear swiftly. So we create biomass. We cut it, it redecomposes because metabolisms are very rapid. We never leave the soil bare. So we have a mixture of plants that work the soil for us. They put down hundreds of meters of roots into the soil. They fill it up. We cut, but without uprooting. So all those roots that are in the soil decompose. And all that we cut we leave on the surface. It becomes the forest ground cover and will continue to nurture the soil, control humidity and reduce evaporation.
Over the years, I have become important. Men have taken to coming and silently meditating under my boughs and foliage. I learned to partake of their presence.
With the appearance of the first trees and a bit more coolness, life organizes itself. We become a little more civilized. The Matrimandir has grown with us and has now completely emerged from the earth. It is our pride, as well as a mirror of our evolution. This construction brings us a lot, as much on the technical as on the spiritual plane. We gain a lot of force from it. The days go by, exhausting, but leaving in us an ineffable sense of a taste of creation and the conviction that while attempting to forge an example for future generations, we are in the process of participating in a true human laboratory.
Below me, there is more and more excitement. Drawn by this unique experiment, men arrive from all countries, bringing new cultures and know-how. At day's end in the early evening, more and more of them come to rest at my feet. So I listen to the musical murmur of their mix of tongues.
"20 years of existence. Today, Auroville is largely reforested, and it is possible for us to begin imagining production and harvesting. Thus the commerce of wood begins. It brings in some income for the community and resurrects carpentry work in the surrounding villages, allowing the most deprived a steady supply of kindling wood without endangering the forests. Equally, we could not have imagined the richness constituted by seeds and grains. Thanks to our expertise in this domain, we have been able to conduct seed exchanges not only in India, but throughout the world. A considerable amount of work has been done in the classification of seeds. A lot of work has been invested in the health sector as well. Researchers tapping traditional Indian culture, such as Ayurvedic medicine, are in liaison with villages and Indian doctors to conduct important educational work and research on medicinal plants.
From the early 70s, we started going out into the area near to Auroville to find the seeds of the plants that we knew should be here, were needed to be over this plateau. We discovered the sacred groves, the remnant forests, the little patches, roadsides, and that led us to discover this, what we call the bioregion, let's say an area 50 kilometers out from Auroville. Now there's hardly any plants in this whole area that don't have medicinal properties, but what that led to, that detailed analysis of the medical flora, led us to meet with the people to understand the uses of the plant, and started a whole program of revitalizing the local health tradition. Through that we started working with, together, perhaps 60 villages. In getting to know these villages, we could also see a lot of problems, challenges, whether it was the aggressive use of pesticide, or whether it was the granite mining, or whether it was prawn cultivation. And this led to a feeling of a need for protection of that bioregion. And that led to the talking in UNESCO in Paris about declaring the area at least a Ramsar site, a protected wetland, and perhaps later a biosphere reserve. It led to talking to scientists in Delhi, government officials, and that process is moving on. But it can only move on if it is absolutely linked to the community and the community needs and sanction. We are just instruments to perhaps help people plan, as I said before, plan or think in a clear way how to design a really sustainable future for the region. It's a 4-acre site where we already planted some 600 plants, mostly trees, and we're building up this school. And we hope it will be a place where the community plans its future.
As part of this outreach project, we want to generate actually young physicians. So they are nearly completing this 6 months course. So far they have learned about 35 different formulations, which are mostly prepared from our center.
Yeah, working particularly with the traditional healers. We work with them, we bring them together to exchange ideas, remedies, plans for the future. And at the same time we have programs of income generation with the farmers growing medicinal plants in field situations. In establishing this center, some 30 kilometers from Auroville, out there in the middle of rural Tamil Nadu, it's really taking the experiences, particularly the research experiences of Auroville out there, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in education, or water treatment systems, alternative energy. We want out there to have a demonstration site. And particularly the sense of planning, that the people can plan their future. Auroville cannot really be healthy unless the bioregion, it's the area near to it, is healthy too.
Personally, I do not need a house to protect me, but I have to admit that for beings as fragile as humans are, a lone and simple hat is a bit rudimentary for shelter. A compromise had to be reached between man and nature.
The future of Auroville also grows through a project of urban development as respectful as possible of the ecological balance. If termites snacked on our first houses, their amazing constructions that are monsoon resistant and retain their coolness during the summer months have inspired us in our own constructions. It is thus that we developed the manufacturing of unfired compressed earth bricks. These bricks have enabled us to construct a variety of buildings in Auroville, individual dwellings or collective public buildings such as the Deepanam Primary School with its theatre and the kindergarten for the young toddlers. The Dalai Lama, on a second visit to Auroville, laid the first stone of the Tibetan pavilion. He also learned about different areas of research and witnessed a demonstration of how compressed earth bricks are made.
This machine was developed for building the visitor center in Auroville. It was designed in '89. Since then, these machines have been developed a lot. We sell, of course, several hundreds of machines in India, but also we sell machines to USA, Europe, Africa, South Asia, and we sell it all over the world.
These blocks have a certain number of advantages when compared to classical bricks. They are more ecological, can be molded in different shapes, but are also very resistant to water, which is an important factor to be taken into consideration here. They have also proved their earthquake resistance in places such as Gujarat and Turkey. From the beginning of the early 70s, we have been interested in ferrocement techniques. This material, invented in the 19th century by a French architect, has been somewhat left by the wayside in Europe. However, we find a lot of advantages to it.
The advantage of ferrocement is that the applications are very varied, as you play with the design to material ratio. Often you can make molds and use it as prefabricated, or you can also use it in situ. Not only they are cheap, but they are resistant to weathering and to insect attack, especially termites. We have been specialized in training of trainers, which basically means that NGOs, other organizations send us their master masons. In Auroville, there are all these groups, working groups that are making experimentation in various fields. And we felt that Auroville needed to have a visitor center. The building itself is built using ferrocement and compressor block. All the wastewater from the building is collected together, recycled using the DWAT system, which is an environmentally sustainable decentralized wastewater systems, to recycle the water to reuse it for irrigation in the gardens.
Whenever you have fresh water, pure drinking water, which somebody touches, it's called wastewater afterwards. And the tendency from most people is it goes away and we don't think about it, we don't look at it. So it's a waste. If you add a system, a natural system, which is called a baffle tank reactor, you have a truly effective system which treats the wastewater. And this is actually what Auroville has been doing since the last 20 years. It has been trying to put together systems which are efficient, which are natural, durable, and cost-effective. And after so many years of research and development, we have come across such a design which fulfills all these parameters. We even add a planted filter which makes sure that the wastewater, the effluent, is oxygenated, and so that you can touch and use it absolutely without any harm at the end of the cycle.
So what we try to do is a combination of everything. That means ferrocement technology, earth construction, rainwater harvesting, wastewater recycling, solar energy, solar thermal applications. So we try to put the whole package together, especially in public buildings.
The Matru Mandir has now reached its final phase. Over the years, this construction has allowed us to fine-tune a variety of technical innovations in different fields, more particularly that of solar energy.
Down the ages, the sun has been worshipped by man as a god and an inexhaustible source of strength. I myself could not live without its radiance. Today, all around me, I see these men attempting to transform this force into energy. Is it perhaps a new way of life?
It is true that here, with an extremely powerful intensity of sun, 11 months of the year, the harnessing of solar energy was something we naturally turned to.
The use of solar energy in Auroville started with an effort of few pioneering individuals who wanted to have light in their dark homes, because around that time, especially in the Greenbelt area, there was not much possibility of getting electricity. The big barrier at that time, and still today, we stand with a very high cost. The first systems were home lighting kits, which were used mainly for house lighting. We also did a program management for installing about 8,700 home lighting kits in Jammu and Kashmir called Ladakh. Later came a program for solar water pumping. The Government of India came up with the program, and in '94 we installed the first pumps in Auroville. And that's how we went to Punjab to install solar pumps over there. We have now in North India 555 pumps running, which is actually our largest number. Totally we have installed about 1,025 pumps as on today, spread all over India. Later our systems started becoming more complex, and we in '97 installed the solar power plant in Matri Mandir. That time it was one of the biggest plants in the country. This is a 36 kilowatt power plant, feeds at the moment power for all the lighting requirements in the evening, and whatever leftover power is there, it is fed to some pumps and power requirements during the daytime to the Matri Mandir site. After that, many plants have started coming up in different parts of the country.
But prior to reaching this point, we had used solar energy in a very pragmatic way, particularly for cooking with the archaic solar cooker, which was sufficient to cook rice. There was also the solar sterilizer, and more recently the solar water heater. In the late 70s, the idea took hold of experimenting with solar concentrators. In 1995, the adventure for the conception of a community solar kitchen with the integration of a solar bowl started.
The idea was to build a canteen for all Auroville, and we soon found out that the best way to cook was to use steam. We wanted to cook for 1,000 people basically, and that this can easily be produced by the sun. So we immediately thought of creating a solar concentrator. According to our calculations, we were told that to cook 1,000 lunches and 1,000 dinners, we would need about 600 kilos of steam per day. We have innovated in different ways. The first thing is that we have been using prefabricated ferrocement elements to make the spherical structure. If we had made it with any other material, it would have been very costly, and the system that we have used is very, very cheap. That is the first innovation. The second innovation we did was that we have not used any curved mirrors, which are very costly and very difficult to cut. Instead, we are using ordinary bathroom mirrors, which we have laminated with a plain glass at the back to make sure that they don't get damaged by oxidation. There are 11,000 mirrors, so this is definitely a very good solution, very, very cheap, and which provides us a focus which is absolutely sharp enough, no problem at all. We could make bigger ones in the future. This looks like a very reliable and simple technology that could be very multiplied and quite easy to maintain, contrary to many Scheffler concentrators, which seem to us much more vulnerable. This is simple.
Our story stops there for the moment. But it is, of course, far from over. From a red desert to this forest. From a life that was asleep to its awakening. From a survival economy to a stewardship of the future. Several generations have gone by. It was necessary for these men and women to be filled with a great conviction, and with even more than courage, to have reached where they are today. But every human person can contribute in their way to this adventure. More than ever, people must conjugate their efforts to protect me, take care of our planet, and at the same time take care of themselves. Today, as far as I'm concerned, I now have the time to go back to talking to the birds.